First, let's talk about a little bit more about financial intermediation and how it affects your life and how to think about the long term for each of us. Most of us have been socialized into a certain quality of life. Okay, so most of us have a certain expectation about the level of consumption that we're going to participate in over the course of our lives. Right, so you may have grown up with a certain family income, and you have a certain quality of clothes, a certain quality of shoes, a certain quality of car, a certain quality of housing, and you expect to enjoy that level of quality of life, or maybe a little bit better over the course of your life. Most of you, similarly, right now, have relatively low incomes because you're in college. Which is to say that for most of us today, our consumption is greater than our income. How do we achieve that? By borrowing. By borrowing. So a lot of us have student loans, or maybe your parents are helping to pay for some things, or maybe you had a gift from someone. I don't know how you're doing it. I'm glad that you are. But for most of us, our income right now is lower than our consumption, and as a result, we are borrowing. Now, as we complete more and more schooling, our potential income increases. As you finish 1 year of college, your income goes up a little. You finish 2 years of college, your income goes up a little. You finish 3 years of college, your income goes up a little. Finish 3.5 years of college, your income goes up a little. Graduate from college, and your income goes up a lot. Why? Did you learn everything that you needed in that last semester? If so, why not take that last semester first? Right? Yeah.
Once you get a college degree, your income is doubled by if you got a high school.
But why? Why is it that there's this big leap from 3.5 semesters to 4 semesters? Did you learn everything important in that last semester? No. There's a strong signal that gets sent to employers when you finally graduate. It says, I can finish something. I'm not an idiot. I have stick-to-itiveness, and I finish things. It's called the sheepskin effect. And that's because back in the day, when you got a diploma, they would print it on sheepskin because it would last longer. Paper would degrade. Also, there were probably more sheep then. But they would print your diploma on sheepskin, and that diploma said to the world, I've done something. It's a little odd that it works this way, though, but it is the way that it works. So the first lesson is finish. And I have students who ask me, should I take a double major? And I'm like, well, how many more classes would it take you? Would it take you another semester of school? Then no. Right? Should I get a double major? Well, probably not, but is it going to be an econ? Because if so, then yes. Ha ha ha. All right. If you are going to get a double major, you should treat it like investment. Because after all, that's what we're doing here. We're developing human capital. And when you invest, do you invest all in one stock? No, you diversify. So if you're going to take a second major, make sure it's in something as different as possible from your primary major. Do something very different with that second major. Or make one of those second majors be more like something that is a trade, like being an accountant or doing radio or some sort of skill or nursing that actually has a trade kind of relationship with the marketplace. Okay, here's your income. What about your consumption? How is your consumption going to change as you go along through life? You're in college, you're consuming ramen noodles, you graduate. Are you going to maintain the same level of consumption, or are you going to spruce it up a little? You'll probably spruce it up a little, won't you? Probably not a lot. Why not? You got to pay back the loans, right? You got to pay off your loans. Okay, so then you're going through life, right? And then you've been in your first job for 3 years, and then what happens?
Your income increases even more.
Why? What happens after 3 years on the job?
You gain experience.
You've gained experience, and so then what? Yes,
You get promoted?
you could get promoted, although that's not as likely. What else could happen? You could get a raise, that's a possibility. What else could happen? Most likely, what's going to happen is you're going to get an email. That's what you really want to have happen. You want to receive an email from a headhunter. You want somebody else to come and hire you away from wherever it is you're working now to go work someplace else. Okay, that's how you make the really big leaps in income, is by switching jobs. Why? Well, that first 3 years on the job has indicated to the rest of the market, this person is not so much of a jerk that they wanted to fire them. I'm not saying you're not a jerk, I'm just saying you're not so much of a jerk that they want to fire you, right? You've been able to keep a job for 3 years. You've kept yourself alive for 3 years on your own. This person can handle some responsibility. Okay? And hopefully during those first 3 years on the jobs, you have been learning skills. Right? The goal would be to take as your first job, maybe not the job that pays the most, but the job where you can learn the most. The job where you can develop new marketable skills the most. Now, how many times are you going to change your job over the course of your life? I think I'm on my 5th or 6th job right now. And I fully expect to change jobs 3 or 4 more times over the course of my life. Is that the way my grandparents saw the world? No, they expected to be in one job pretty much for their whole lives, then retire, get the gold watch, and move to Florida. Okay? That's not the world we live in anymore. The world we live in, you should expect to change jobs pretty regularly. Why? Because the world is changing so fast. It's a dynamic market out there. And it's the people who don't plan on changing jobs that can't. It's the people who aren't learning new skills while in their current job that don't have the ability to pivot to a different job. So you get a job. What should you be doing in your free time? Netflix! No. A little bit of Netflix. But you should be reading. You should be learning other new skills. Again, preferably skills that are as different as tolerable from whatever skills you're exercising on the job. Diversifying your skill set. Never stop learning. Always be getting ready for your next job. Always be training yourself for whatever your next job is going to be. Okay, so your income goes up. You're in your next career job. And then you're moving along. You get married. You have a couple of kids. Right? You get a divorce. Don't do that. That's expensive. Don't get a divorce. That'll throw you way off. You'll end up back in debt again. Try to avoid that at all costs, okay? Which means that maybe be really careful when you get married. Okay? Be really careful before you get married. Okay?
This sounds like real life experience.
I've never been divorced. And I never hope to be. Very happily married. Okay, so let's smooth this out a little bit to make it a little bit just simpler to look at here. Okay? But I've known people who've gotten divorced. Okay, so here's your consumption. You're not trying to make it go up a whole lot. And then what happens right about here? When you finally paid off your debts, actually. You finally paid off all your debts, and you're moving up in your job, you get promoted to the manager, or maybe you start your own firm or something like that, and so your income is continuing to go up, and then, yeah, at some point, boom, what happened to you? You're retired, okay? And all during this time frame, you are saving. Okay, you're saving. Now, hopefully during this time frame, your kids move out of the house. Hopefully they move out of the house. And maybe one of them gets married and you have to spend a little bit on a wedding. All right, but then hopefully, they're out of the house and your expenses are lower. You can move out of the house and into a small apartment. Your overall expenses are decreasing. Okay, and you're going along like this, and then what happens? You assume room temperature. You get dead. Okay? You get dead. And so during this time, you're in retirement, and you are using up what you have saved. Now, how much do you want to have for retirement? What quality of life do you want to enjoy in retirement? Well, that might determine how long you continue working. What happened to the previous generations is a lot of people had too much life left at the end of their money. right? A lot of people will say too much month left at the end of the paycheck. But the big picture of that is too much life left at the end of your money. You had saved up some retirement money, but then you lived longer than you expected to, because a lot of people didn't expect to live to beyond 60 or 70 years. That was the norm for my grandparents' generation when they were kids. But then they all lived to be 80 or more. What about you? How long do you expect to live? What age do you expect to be when you die? How many of you were vaccinated against chickenpox? They didn't have that when I was a kid. There was no chickenpox vaccine when I was a kid. So if one of the kids in the neighborhood got sick, all the moms would get together and get the kids together so that the kids would all get chickenpox so that they could get it taken care of and out of the way. Especially if like one of your brothers or sisters got chickenpox, they put all three of you in the bed together until you all got it. Why? That way mom knows, for these 2 weeks, I'm going to be dealing with sick kids with chickenpox. I don't want to deal with one kid for 2 weeks, another kid for another 2 weeks, and another kid for another 2 weeks after that. Let's get it done and out of the way. This is the normal way of doing things. It wasn't until the 1970s, or a little bit later, that almost all of the childhood disease vaccines have been invented and developed. Now today we're dealing with a new pandemic, where we need another new vaccine, but for the most part, you guys have been vaccinated against primary things that would have killed you. Why do so many people today die of cancer?
Because you can't be vaccinated.
Because nothing else killed them. All the other things that people normally would have died from, they've been able to treat. Why do you die of cancer? Because you didn't die of anything else. It's a horrible way of looking at it, but it's the truth.
Might that be death by old age?
Yes, death by old age, but there's always some sort of malady attached to it. If you're not planning on living to be about 100 years old, you're underestimating. I fully expect to live to be 100 years old, and I'm not in the best of health. Okay? All right. Another thing that happened was a lot of people put their savings into their house. Right? They bought a bigger house and made that their main investment. That happened here in Muncie. And people who worked in the factories bought houses and fixed them up and took good care of them and expected to sell the house and move to Florida when they retired. But what happened? Yeah.
They thought that their house was going house value was going to keep increasing because of land, but that's a myth.
Well, it's not necessarily a myth. What happened in Muncie is all the factories closed, and so there's no reason to move here, unless you're going to be an economics professor. So all these people put all their money into their houses, and now what are their houses worth? Hardly anything. You could buy a house in Muncie for $10,000. There's one downtown that I know about right now. It's 700 square feet, tiny house. I went to a tax sale last fall where the county government was taking pieces of property that nobody had been paying taxes on and was selling those empty lots, right? They're empty lots in town with water, sewage, electricity all ready to go, but it's an empty lot right now. They were selling the empty lots for $25. 25 bucks, you get a lot, ready to go. Buy yourself a double wide, move in there with your friends. You got to deal with the meth heads next door, but okay. In the meantime, my brother-in-law just bought $1 million house in California because that was the size that they could afford. That was the low end of houses in California. Okay. This whole model, where the basic premise is that your lifetime consumption isn't going to change a whole lot with your income, that you're going to have a pretty constant level of income. That's called consumption smoothing. All right, and this is a pretty good model for understanding how people handle their money. What if you win the lottery one day and your income goes up? How's that going to affect your lifetime consumption? It could, but it's not going to go up by the same amount we don't expect. Right? What most people would do with a windfall like that is pay off their debt faster or save farther for retirement. So instead of having a big jump in that consumption, maybe they'll have like a little